I'm Isabel Barandiarán. Most known by my students is Ellie. In 2010, I finished my social integration studies and I'm now finishing my degree in philosophy. Since then, I've been working in different parts of the world, both European and non-European countries, as a social worker and English teacher. I've taught English from 3-year-old, including primary, secondary and adult education, from A1 level to B2, including certifications, official certifications, both for Trinity and Cambridge. My students have always had a great experience and positive results in their official examinations. What makes special my way of teaching is I'm trying to adapt my lessons into individual and special needs for students, even though if the group is over 15. Now I'm going to tell you about the standard lesson plan for an adult group in a class about 90 minutes from a B1 plus group. The book that I've chosen, it's the Speak Out Intermediate from Pearson. That is the one that I had at home. First of all, I'll normally spend about 5 minutes in welcoming and warming at my students. So I normally ask them if they had enough time during the weekend for practicing their English and so on. The second point that I normally do, and I spend from 10 to 15 minutes depending on the amount of homework that I had asked the previous week, it's correcting homework. For me, it's so important to evaluate, to assess their process of knowledge during the whole course. So every day I can check their understanding of the previous lesson and also check their weaknesses. Third, I normally start with the grammar point itself. So, now for this lesson plan I've chosen the third conditional, that is in Unit 9 from the book that I told you before. And I had to look over the first and second conditional as it's given in Unit 6, and now we are at the end of the course more or less in Unit 9. So I will spend for about 10 minutes and, as I said, looking over the first conditional, second conditional, conditional type 0, so we can make the differences, knowing similarities and differences between the things that we already know and the new grammar point that is third conditional. So we will do it in spoken exercises, as I will develop later. Then I will spend about 10 minutes explaining the grammar point itself. So I normally start by telling them the use, I'll tell you later as well, and then how is it structured. Having said that, we will spend over 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the amount of students we have in the class, doing speaking exercises in order to reinforce the grammar point that we have just learned. Then more or less at this point we are at the half of the class. Then we will start changing a little bit the activity. So we will do maybe 1 or 2 written exercises that we have in our book or workbook. So I can also check if they have clearly understood the way of writing the grammar point. Then we will do a listening exercise, maybe let's say fill in the gap exercises related to the grammar point. And as I normally do with the listenings, is that I will record them twice, and I will take a small part of the listening, just an extract, and we will repeat it. So we can do intensive listening for about maybe the whole listening activity regarding the pre-listening as well. It will take about 20 minutes, so that it's really important in the class. And at that point, we go into the last part of the class, that it will be the moment in which we sum up. I'll ask the students if they had any question, if it's everything clearly understood, and then I'll explain the homeworks for the next day. And we will say goodbye, that's all. The grammar point that I chose was explanation of third conditional. First, we will set this scenario. That means looking over 0, first and second conditional. Having revised that, we will start by explaining the use of the third conditional. As I normally try to make my students aware of the importance of learning this specific grammar point, that's why I start by telling them why do we need to use this grammar point. So, the third conditional is used to talk about imaginary situations in the past that we cannot change. That's what we needed. So, one of the differences that we have between the second, there is also an imaginary conditional, as you know, and the third conditional is that in the second conditional, we can still have the opportunity or the possibility that something happened. For instance, if you're saying, if it rained tomorrow, I wouldn't go out. It may happen that it rains tomorrow, so that's why we use the second conditional. But imagine that you want to talk about something that happened in the past and you can no longer change it. So you may say, okay, yesterday it was a party, but I didn't go. So let's imagine what would have happened if I had gone to the party yesterday. So you may say, if I had gone to the party yesterday, I would have fun with you. I would have fun with you, right? So, first, we try to make students aware, conscious of the need of the conditional itself, and then we're going to explain them how do we structure it grammatically. So we will start by saying that in the first part of the conditional, what we normally call the if clause, if I had gone to the party, this had gone, you know it. What is it? Yeah, is the past perfect. Yeah, I'm always asking them to tell me what they are already supposed to know. And what about the second part? If I had gone to the party, I would, right? Because we're focusing on pronunciation later. I would have had fun, maybe. What is it? We have would, that in this case is contracted, so it's would, followed by have, followed by the past participle. So this is the grammar. I will write it on the blackboard in case we had here, not like here. Then I will ask my students to focus on the pronunciation before we start the next step. There it will be the spoken exercise. So we will notice the difference in the third conditional of the would. There is the contracted form that we normally use in third conditional of would. So we will notice that in ordinary would use, like when you say, would you give me a hand, would has a longer pronunciation. And, however, when we're using it in the third conditional, we contract it so it's a weak form. I'll say, I would have had fun, right? Then, having said that, having explained the grammar structure and the use of it, I will ask them to do some interactive exercises. For instance, I will tell them to work first of all individually. So maybe just tell them to write down 3 or 4 sentences, trying to use this third conditional that we have just known and learned, and then we will change them. And for the second exercise, I will just ask them to do the first part of the conditional. For instance, just first halves as if I had woken up earlier, so that the other student, his or her partner, would continue with the second part. We will spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes doing this exercise in pairs, and then we will compare our answers with the rest of the class. It's also a good idea, depending on the level of the group, imagine that we are in a B1 class, so they may be able to do this exercise, that we build up a story together. This is an exercise that I normally like, and there's also a fun activity to do with the class. For instance, I will start a story, or in case any other student wants, they can start, of course, by saying situation that has happened in the past and it's impossible to change it. For instance, let's say that yesterday I missed the bus. So I'll say, oh, I had to travel yesterday, but I missed the bus. Then I will say, if I had woken up earlier, and my student will continue, I wouldn't have missed the bus. And then the next student has to continue the same story with another sentence. Let's say, if I hadn't spent so much time washing my hair, and then the other student will continue. So it's a good way of making a story together about this grammar point. And before we move on to another activity, I will ask them to explain to me what we have already learned in this class. So I'll ask if a volunteer is able to explain to other students how it works in terms of the use and the grammar structure. And if we have extra time, we will also use some photocopiable materials, as I normally have. Let's say this kind of materials in which you have different prompts, and you'll have to make the whole sentence, maybe writing down or just spoken English. So you're given a situation, and you have to guess which conditional will you use, will be best. And at the end of the class, if we have no more doubts, we will do the next activity. That it will be listening one regarding the plan that we have just said before. That's all. Thank you.